Listen, I want to tell you a story that began in a very human way, with fear, doubts, and a small workshop that smelled of dust, metal, and fresh paint. I stood there for the first time, looking at the old walls and thinking, will I survive this? Will it work? My idea was bold, but in a world that had long been accustomed to big players, it seemed defenseless. My team and I were literally just a few people back then. One old mentor looked at me and said, "Are you sure you're ready to risk everything?" I felt my heart pound. Because risk isn't just a word. It's sleepless nights. It's when a supplier doesn't deliver parts, and you realize that you won't be able to start production tomorrow. But at the same time, something burned inside. A small fire of confidence that whispered, "Try it. Just try it." And we began. The little three-letter sign, UFS, on the door of our studio was more than just a name. It was a symbol that we dared to dream despite our fears. The first days were like walking on a tightrope over an abyss. Every sound, the rumble of old cars, the creak of metal, all this reminded me that the fall was near. And at the same time, there was a strange excitement. I could hold in my hands a piece of iron that tomorrow would turn into a product that could change people's lives. I remember the smell of fresh wood, the sound of it creaking under my hands, and how my colleagues laughed at my ideas because they seemed crazy. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, that the first crises awaited us, that we would be pushed into the wrong path every day. But then I decided I wouldn't give up. And even amidst fear and doubt, the first spark of faith appeared in my heart. Maybe a small workshop, a small team, and a bold idea are all that is needed to start something big. As soon as we got back on our feet a little, life immediately reminded us that the path to success is not a straight line. At first, everything seemed simple. A new contract, a few orders, I felt like I was on a wave. But suddenly, one by one, equipment began to break down, suppliers failed, and money ran out faster than we could earn it. I stood in the middle of the workshop, looking at a pile of parts and thinking, maybe this is the end? Maybe I'm just too ambitious? The team also felt the pressure. Some began to doubt. Some nervously joked, trying to hide their fear. I saw in their eyes the same thing I felt myself, the fear of failure. And every time someone said, "Maybe we should give up," my heart clenched in my chest. But there was another side. Every crisis was a lesson. Every broken car forced us to look for new solutions. Every late delivery taught us to be flexible and resourceful. And I began to understand. The real test is not when the world is against you, but whether you are willing to stand up alone when everything around you is falling. We stayed in the workshop at night, repaired the equipment with our own hands, looked for alternative suppliers, negotiated, persuaded, risked our last money. And in these dark, cramped rooms, amidst the smell of oil and metal, the first real confidence appeared. If we endure now, we will be stronger tomorrow. Those were the days when I realized that success is not an instant achievement, but a struggle that tests your resolve. And although sometimes it felt like just closing the door and walking away, we didn't back down. We kept moving forward because belief in the idea was stronger than fear. And it was these first crises that laid the foundation for what would later become a global breakthrough. Because even in the darkness, there is a spark, and this spark can ignite a fire that will illuminate the entire path. After all those days of fear and doubt, the moment came when we finally saw the fruits of our perseverance. The first contract, the first client who believed in us, and I remember how my heart literally jumped with joy. Every little thing we did right now turned into a victory, and these. I saw my colleagues smile, their eyes sparkle with the same sparkle that I had felt on my first day in the workshop. Every piece assembled by hand, every small step towards a customer, every successful product test, it was all like a small miracle. We began to believe in. But even in these victories, there was a lesson. Each success was tiny, and we knew that if we stopped now, it could crumble. So we learned to appreciate the moment while preparing for the next challenge. I learned that victory is not just about achieving a goal, but about being able to. And then something symbolic happened. The first big customer praised us for our quality, and for the first time I felt that our small efforts were starting to change the world around us. It was the moment when fear began to recede, and with it came true confidence. We could do more than we imagined. We moved step by step, and every little thing gained weight. Small victories became our weapons against doubts, and we realized that even the most modest beginning can turn into something great if we are not afraid of risk. As the small victories started to pile up, I thought everything would be smooth sailing. But life quickly showed me that the real challenge doesn't always come from outside. It comes from within, in the form of conflict, different visions of the future, and even small disagreements that can destroy everything you've worked for. I remember that evening when the whole team gathered. The atmosphere was tense, like a cloud before a storm. One of my key colleagues, someone who had worked with me since day one, said that we were going the wrong way, that we needed to go in a different direction. His words hit me like a cold wind. We could lose everything if we don't change our approach. I felt my heart clench. On the one hand, I understood that his idea made sense, that the risk was real. On the other, I was afraid of appearing weak, afraid that any hesitation would destroy the trust of the team. We argued for hours. Voices rose, words sounded sharp, and I could see the tension in the air, people turning away, holding back their emotions. But in that struggle, I learned something important. Leadership is not just about leading. It's also about listening, even when you don't like what you hear. I took a step back and started listening. And that's when the first real transformation of our team occurred. We brought together different perspectives, found compromise, and created a new strategy that combined risk and safety. This period was difficult. I lay awake at night thinking about how not to lose the people who had been by my side since day one. I was afraid that any mistake would break up our little family, which we called the UFS team. But it was through these conflicts that we learned to work together, even when it seemed like everyone was going in different directions. And then came a moment that became symbolic for me. We gathered after a difficult discussion and put a large sheet of paper in front of us. On it we wrote how we saw the future of the company and agreed that every decision would be made together. It was a small but huge step. Because I understood, the real strength of the company is in the cohesion of the team and in the willingness to listen to each other even in the most difficult moments. This internal crisis taught me an important lesson. It's okay to fear losing control. It's okay to have doubts. But true determination comes from listening, accepting, and turning conflict into fuel for growth. And it's this lesson that we've taken with us into the next phase, which will be the beginning of a great transformation. It felt like we had reached the limit. We had survived the first crises, taken small steps forward, learned to work together even in conflict. But something inside me told me, to become a truly world-class company, we had to risk everything and change the rules of the game. I remember that night, sitting alone in an empty office. The lamplight cast long shadows on the walls, and the rain fell softly outside the window. I held an old product mock-up in my hands, thinking that it had already become our symbol, but I felt this was not enough. My heart sank, because any change could turn into a disaster, and the fear of failure scared me more than ever. In the morning, I gathered the team. I could feel everyone looking at me, waiting for a simple answer. But I didn't give one. I said, we're changing direction. We're taking a risk that most people are afraid to even imagine. A pause. Silence. One of the team, an old friend, nodded, the others frowned. I could see the doubt in their eyes, and I was afraid we would lose their trust. We started the first steps of transformation. We changed the business model, introduced new technologies, opened new markets. We renamed some of the products, repainted the sign, started cooperating with international partners. Every day was a test. Every time I felt that I was playing on the edge, but at the same time I felt how our small workshop was turning into something big. It was scary. It was unknown. But there was strength in that fear. Every new idea, every bold bet, every decisive step gave us a push forward. And we started to see the first results. Orders grew, customers returned, and our team felt like they were participating in something bigger than just a business. This great transformation taught me that fear and doubt are not enemies, but signals that you are on the right path. And that sometimes, to become great, you need to be unafraid to destroy the old in order to build the new. We took this step together, and it was the beginning of a global breakthrough that we could not even dream of in those early days in the workshop. I remember that day like it's now. We signed a major international contract for the first time. We were sitting in a conference room, and the voices of our partners from the other side of the world were on the phone. I saw their smiles on the screen. I saw how they believed in our little idea, which a few years ago only lived in my head and in the old workshop. At that moment, my heart seemed huge. It was beating with joy and excitement. But at the same time, there was fear. Because entering the international arena is not just a new market. It is new rules, new competitors, new risks. I felt that one wrong step could turn into a disaster. But this danger only added adrenaline, made us more determined. We started exporting products, finding new partners, visiting fairs, exhibitions, talking to people who previously seemed unreachable. In all this hustle and bustle, I felt that a small workshop with 3 letters on the door was turning into something that really affected the world. The team was also changing. They began to act as international-level professionals, but without losing the soul and the fire that we carried from the first days. We were inventing new approaches to products, implementing technologies that we had never even dreamed of before. And most importantly, we felt that our little dream was starting to live a life of its own. There were moments of doubt. One of the partners expressed skepticism early on and said bluntly, "You won't be able to compete internationally." I remember that moment because it fueled our perseverance. We worked even harder, learned from our mistakes, fixed our shortcomings, and proved that even a small team can outperform large corporations. And when the moment came when the first international reviews were great, when orders started coming in from different countries at the same time, I felt a huge sense of pride. Not just for the business, but for the fact that we had endured a path full of fear, doubts, internal conflicts, and external obstacles. A small idea had turned into a global success story, and I knew we could do even more if we didn't stop. This breakthrough showed us that fear is a signal, not an obstacle, and that the courage to take risks and act is the key to true victory. We had a taste of how a small workshop becomes a global player, and it was just the beginning of a new stage. Modern challenges that require even greater courage and endurance. The world around us was changing faster than we could blink. New technologies, new competitors, new market demands. All this was constantly knocking on our company's door. We were already internationally known, but suddenly we realized, becoming big is only half the battle. Now we have to stay ahead. I remember sitting in my office and looking at sales statistics. Competitors began to copy our products. Startups with crazy ideas appeared on the market, and global changes in logistics threatened delays. One thing was going through my head: what to do, how to keep up the pace. My heart sank, because we knew that any pause meant falling behind. But it is precisely in these challenges that new ideas are born. We began to look at problems as opportunities: automation of production, innovative processes, new strategies for cooperation with partners. I gathered a team, and we sat in conference rooms for a long time, reviewing plans, arguing, inventing, taking risks. Every decision was nerve-wracking, but we knew those who do not take risks lose the chance to remain a leader. There were moments when I doubted my own decisions. One of the top managers said bluntly, "This is too difficult, we can't handle it." I felt the fear returning, but at the same time another voice woke up. "We need to act now. Don't stop." And we acted. We tested new markets, implemented digital tools, adapted faster than our competitors could react. And then something extraordinary happened. UFS didn't just survive. we strengthened our position. We learned not to fear change, but to use it as fuel. Every new crisis, every new challenge turned into a lesson and gave us strength to move forward. I saw the team grow, people become bolder, we began to think big and at the same time flexible. Modern challenges have proven to us one thing. Even after a global breakthrough, even when it seems that we have reached the peak, we must remain alert, adapt, learn, and not be afraid to take risks. Because this is what determines who will stay in the game and who will disappear from the market like shadows of the past. And it is these lessons that have become the foundation for the present and the future, a stage where UFS becomes not just a company, but a symbol of courage, perseverance, and faith in one's own idea. When I look at UFS now, it's hard to believe that it all started with a small workshop and a few people who had nothing but faith in an idea. Now our company is a global player, with sophisticated production lines, teams around the world, and partners who once doubted our small. We achieved stability, but we never stopped. Every day is a new decision, a new challenge, a new goal. I remember receiving our first international awards, how journalists wrote about us, how our product began to affect people in different countries. At such moments, you feel that all those fears, all those sleepless nights. I also remember sometimes standing in a factory or an office and seeing young workers looking at us with the same sparkle in their eyes that we once had. And then I realize, our story is not just about business. It is a story about the human spirit, about faith, about the courage to start even in the dark. All these years have been full of surprises. Just when you think you've reached the top, the world throws up new challenges, global competition, changing markets, new technologies. And instead of being afraid, we've learned to adapt, to use crisis as fuel, to take a step forward when others stand still. Today's UFS is a recognition that a small team that once stood amidst dust and metal was able to turn a dream into something huge. But it is also a reminder, success is not an end, it is a constant journey. And it is the willingness to move forward, regardless of fear, that makes us stronger. And when I look at this path, I see not only the numbers and awards, but all the lessons we learned, how important it is to listen to the team, how to take risks, how to turn difficulties into opportunities. Because without this, no peak is meaningful. When I think back on the journey of UFS, it's hard to believe how far we've come. From a small workshop that smelled of dust and metal to international contracts, teams around the world, and global influence, it's been a journey filled with fear, doubt, crisis, and bold decisions. Every obstacle, every conflict, every failure has been part of our growth.